And
in living color.
we'll let it count up a little bit. Welcome back, everybody. Everything's nice and breezy now. I hope you got your RSP. I know the RSP post draft is coming and rookie
It
draft.
came out today.
Yes. Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And
You can relax.
right. And tomorrow's May Day. And May Day, May Day. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Thursday night. Not quite as thrilling of a Thursday night as last Thursday night. Delivered thrills and chills, time spent with friends. Certainly looking ahead, looking forward to the future. But it's still an exciting night because today, if you ordered your RSP, you got your RSP post draft supplement. We're going to spoil a few things from that tonight. We're going to talk about landing spots. We had our real time reactions in the first round. Been writing a lot of stuff. I did my Bloom 100 update, and I still want to go back and change some of the rankings I put in there. But we have second day guys, Matt. We have third day guys. Other things here. Still missing Cecil Lammey, hoping that somehow his schedule can get realigned.
We're going to kidnap him, I think. We're going
Yeah,
to
right, right. We're just gonna set up have him set up another camera, so even if he's just up in the corner yapping, doing his Denver Thursday night thing, he can still be with us. We can just
We
say, "Hi,
get hand
Cecil."
signals from him or something.
Right,
Like,
right,
so when
right.
he's talking about something, we can get the real down low with his
Right.
fingers crossed or whatever. Yeah.
Blink twice if John Elway is going to take over at quarterback or something like that. All right. Well, he might want to take over at quarterback. That's a good place to start with any, Matt, because I'm not going to ask you about a 2020 RSP player. I'm going to ask you about a 2019 player in Drew Lock. He has been set up with a track team around him now, including his tight end from college, KJ Hamler. They didn't just stop at Jerry Jeudy. We already knew Cortland Sutton was coming on. They also got Melvin Gordon this offseason. You got Pat Shurmur. Now there's an extra factor of uncertainty about installs of offenses going from the Shanahan offense to a Pat Shurmur offense. That's what Scangarello was running last year. So, that could cause a slow takeoff. Do you think from what you watched, can Drew Lock start to harvest the fruit from all these seeds that were planted this year?
I think he can. I don't think we're going to see a Patrick Mahomes like lift off from him, but I certainly think that instead of it being a rocket, maybe it's a glider, and I think that, they're not going to have any problems getting that off the ground. It's just probably not going to be going at the level of productivity or being as prolific as what they hope to compete with the with the Chiefs just yet.
Right.
But you understand, I mean, the fact that they have, it's curious to me that they had kind of Noah Fant, but now they're bringing in, we'll just call him Chuka because that's basically how his nickname is, Chuka. So we'll call him Chuka, and Alberto Chuka. He's an interesting find because he could obviously be a guy that produces as well or better than Fant, potentially down the line, but he's a little bit more of a boom bust player. But then you also look and go, well, maybe they'll run two tight end sets. If they run more two tight end sets, then that's an interesting play because then you start thinking about KJ Hamler and where everybody's drafting KJ Hamler. Is that really kind of an overvalued spot? Or how's it going to be balanced enough? Because maybe they open it up enough where you have, empty sets. And does that empty set mean that there's two tight ends in that empty set? And then you add Hamler and then Gordon's not on the field. I don't know. I mean, that's a fascinating look itself. I regardless of all of that, I think Drew Lock is a player you want to have. And I think he's going to be available probably in that 9 to 12 round range where you're going to feel pretty good about what he has to offer in terms of value.
Behind a Mike Munchak line, that's good. Absolutely good. They got Graham Glasgow this offseason, and we know how Munchak can elevate those players. It's exciting. The AFC is exciting now, right? Buffalo's pushing their chips in, Indy's pushing their chips in, Denver's pushing their chips in, Kansas City and Baltimore are still setting the pace. Pittsburgh has one more run with Roethlisberger. This is going to be fun to watch.
And in 2 years, you could be looking at Miami or the Browns.
Yep.
They could both be. Steelers might still have 1 year left in them. Who knows? It's interesting to see.
Absolutely. when you were going through the RSP, so let me tell you, I'll spoil mine. I actually didn't shake up the wide receivers too much. I basically kept that big fat second tier of wide receivers roughly where I had them. I there may have been some shuffling, like moving Jonathan Taylor ahead of Jerry Jeudy. I mean, look, unless Drew Lock, this is where doing projections really helps, because unless you have Drew Lock throwing for 5,000 yards, then it's tough for Judy and Sutton and Fant and Hamler. Like, it's tough for all of these guys to hit the mark in the passing game. So maybe I moved, and Jonathan Taylor, I know that you're excited about. Everyone should be excited about Jonathan Taylor's landing spot in terms of fit, in terms of a team that will use him the way that he should be used. But I didn't shake up the order very much of those second tier guys. I basically left them in the. I think Jalen Reagor might have moved up a little bit just because they see him as a savior. They put such an emphasis on him. I like Denzel Mims' opportunity, but I was already high on him. Did you find that landing spot shook up, those wide receivers from, say, 4 to 12 a little bit at least, or were you not that moved by the landing spots?
It didn't shake them up too much for me. It may have moved individual guys up or down a little bit, but the tier in itself was pretty solid and stayed pretty good. I would say, you look at guys like Mims, and the bad side of it is there's, as I've kind of characterized in the post draft, there are a lot of almost were's and never beens and underachievers on that New York Jets roster. And Rashad Perriman might lead the way as the guy who's trending back upward.
Right.
But Sean Jefferson being the coach kind of gives you some optimism about Mims in itself. And the fact that I was talking to Joe Bellick on Turn on the Jets yesterday, and, Bellick brought up that Joe Douglas has a 6-year contract, the GM. The fact that he was able to negotiate that tells you he's going to control this show. So I like the fact that Mims may get a little more developmental time. So guys like Mims made sense to me. Ruggs fell for me a little bit, just because who's the quarterback? Who's it going to be? How's it going to be? If it's Marcus Mariota, I just don't trust Marcus Mariota. Derek Carr, I mean, I'm okay with, but that's interesting. Brian Edwards kind of actually moved up.
Right.
He actually, I'm actually liked the Brian Edwards pick more than the Ruggs pick, and could see how Edwards at some point ends up, beating out Tyrell Williams, or at least taking over for that and being the guy there. T. Higgins, kind of the same, but I look at it and say, you've got Tyler Boyd, you've still got AJ Green. I think fantasy owners know that they're counting on AJ Green or John Ross to get hurt. And at one point, one of those guys are going to get hurt, and we're going to see Higgins on the field. But if, there's still a little bit of palpable risk there. Duvernay is interesting. I've seen a lot of people drop him down.
No.
And I think like Devin Duvernay is underrated. I have him from the 12 drafts that I monitored. He's like underrated by about 10 spots for me, because I have him rated higher, 10 spots higher than where he's being drafted. And I think a lot of that is he's going to play inside probably. Right. They're going to keep Marquise Brown outside. And what if they do decide, what? We like how he runs out of the backfield. What if we make him kind of Danny Woodhead with even more speed, and use him out of the slot and out of the backfield at the same time? He could wind up being a PPR monster if that happens, and he certainly has the hands for it. So those guys really stood out to me. Ayuk didn't really register as highly for me, though it's interesting because guys like Dan Hatman and Crockett, the kid who used to play cornerback for the 49ers, they've talked a lot about how good of a fit Ayuk is there. And I understand they kind of hit on the same things. He's good on slants. He's good on the quick hitting throws. He uses his feet very well, but you and I both noticed he doesn't use his hands well. So, and none of those videos really showed him having to deal with press where he had to use his hands or run some of those intermediate routes that Emmanuel Sanders runs so well,
right,
that are the hard routes that I didn't see on these analyses. So to me, Ayuk still is a little bit on the lower end. But on the whole, I think fantasy drafters, from what I've seen, have been getting it right with these wide receivers.
I agree. And one of the other things I love about Duvernay, by the way, loves to block. And that's great. for a Ravens team, right?
Yeah.
I mean that's another thing that can keep him on the field, and I just think that the Duvernay fit was fantastic. I
Yeah.
mean, Willie Snead has had a really nice career getting what he's gotten out of his skills, but that's just such a massive upgrade in that spot in the offense. And if all you do is ask him, because he's not a classic slot receiver, that he's not at all like KJ Hamler in the sense that he's going to be able to break guys down in routes and make them look stupid, but he can run past them and he can win contested balls. He can win balls in tight quarters, and that's fine for the Ravens. You're not running these timing based offense where he's got to hit his mark and be ready for the ball coming out, anticipation from Lamar Jackson. It's just occasionally getting that 80-yard touchdown because he's a vertical threat from the slot. And when he's not running those routes, he can blot out a slot corner who's not going to be ready for him. Go ahead.
And he uses his hands well and off the line, which is pretty cool. And, listen, this is fun. So the narrative with Duvernay is that, John Harbaugh calls him up and he's like, when do I get the playbook? I want to get started now. And John commented to the meeting, he was like, I couldn't believe how serious this guy was. Like he was more serious than we make it.
He wasn't like, oh, I'm so happy. Yeah.
He's like, none of that. He's just like, I want to get started. When do I get my playbook? I want to get going. Like, when do we work? Because I want to get to work. And the last receiver that we remember who was kind of like that was Michael Thomas when he was like, I'm going to, when Cardell Jones was like, oh, you have no idea what he's going to be doing with Drew Brees because he stuck around to me like glue when I took over at Ohio State as an injury sub. Like I couldn't get him away from me. And I have a feeling that Devin Duvernay is going to be that same kind of guy in terms of effort. And you're right. I mean, like he's going to be inside, and the inside is where you want to be in that offense or in the backfield.
Middle of the field. Lamar Jackson's hot zone is in the middle of the field, and that's where he's going to be. So that's exciting. That's going to help Mark Andrews. And it's just the Ravens. Patrick Queen we saw in real time, but they get J.K. Dobbins.
And Matabuike, who's one of my favorite players in this class. Between the Browns and the Ravens, they picked all the players I really like.
How excited were you when Grant Delpit went to the Browns?
I was overjoyed.
They're pulling you back in.
I was on ClevelandBrowns.com and I went off about him, and apparently I compared him to Charles Woodson. That's the guy I've compared him to. Charles Woodson went on Twitter and started talking about how what positions he played, and he was basically a football player. But in response to what somebody had written about me talking about Delpit, but I think the Browns walked in with a wheelbarrow into the bank and said, just open the vault and shut up and just start piling in the dough, because they stole him.
They did, and they even traded down and got him with that was the Colts moving up 3 spots to get Jonathan Taylor there. Zara Kansabedian. Sorry if I said
your name. Hey, Zara.
Zara. What's the value of A.J. Dillon going to be? Let me speak on this first, because, wow, the Packers. I mean, as it is, I don't want to say unforced error, because Jordan Love could hit and make it not look like an error, but that is a massive, titanic decision in the first round, as we talked about. And then in the second round, they take A.J. Dillon, who's a fine player, but now the other Aaron Jones, I mean, I guess you're signaling that he's not going to get a second contract because they're not going to be willing to pay him. I mean, maybe he'll take Austin Eckler money or something like that. And then they take an H-back, the guy they want to use like Kyle Juszczyk, DeGuara, in the third round, and that's fine. But what they say it signals is Matt LaFleur wants to make this a run-based team. That even kind of, in a much more structured offense, but that doesn't necessarily say Jordan Love to me. I mean, that doesn't say, I don't know. I mean, look, we try not to be too harsh, but we know that sometimes teams either are incoherent or they have dissension among different forces in the organization, so that it's discordant. What we're watching from the outside reflects no agreement. But I mean, even if this was the plan, it doesn't make that much sense. And honestly, Matt, it makes me feel like this organization is going to veer into one that doesn't enhance the value of its players. I'm not that interested in A.J. Dillon. I also think this also means that, A.J. Dillon's a 2-down back. I think they'll probably keep Jamal Williams or otherwise continue to roll with 2 backs. I'm not that interested in A.J. Dillon, even though he did make it into the second round. How about you?
See, I'm a little more interested in him, but I understand all of what you just said, because the way I look at it, you really are having a game here where the coach is trying to pry control away from the head of the organization on the field, which is Aaron Rodgers. And so you have this kind of toxic behavior between a young coach who doesn't know how to influence well, between between a quarterback who probably behaves immaturely at times, but is the voice and the operation of the offense. And you have to, you have to figure out a way to play nice in this to get the most out of that player. But part of that isn't to walk in and say, you're going to do things my way and this is the way I want it done, or else, because you're basically disrespecting probably the best player on the team and the voice of the team.
Where's the recognition of what he's accomplished for this franchise?
Yeah, because they didn't do that with Brady. They didn't do it with Manning. They didn't do it with, any of the aging veterans. They let the veterans be coaches on the field, and Rodgers is capable of doing that. You just have to be better at how you go about this, and he didn't do that well, so he's created a standoff. And so now when you hear people say that they've created leverage, against Aaron Rodgers with Jordan Love, as I joked on our football guys message board, our private board, I said, if that's leverage, that's kind of like strapping TNT to a chicken and asking it to and send it at someone. You have no idea where that chicken's going to wind up, and it's probably not going to wind up at its target. And yes, no chickens were harmed during the making of this idea, but at the same time, I think this is going to blow up in their faces, because but I do think the idea of having a use check like player, and I don't know if I'd call DeGuara a use check like player. He's an interesting guy, a good player, but he's a former wide receiver, not a former fullback. He's a former wide receiver now playing fullback, and I think he can block pretty well, and I liked him. But I do like Dillon, and Dillon can catch out of the backfield. But yes, most teams will use him as a two down back. He's very nimble. He's quicker than you would expect. Very good vision. He's not Andre Williams. He's nowhere close.
It's so funny that you say that, because it's like that's what Dillon is what the Giants thought they were getting in Andre Williams.
Exactly. And to me, that's a good thing, especially if they go two tight ends. They go, downhill. They want to play that solid game. I get that. The fear there is the reason that A.J. Dillon isn't number 4 on my list, though he would have been capable of being number 4 on my list as a talent. And the reason he's not is because of the dysfunction of this offense, and because of the fact that Jordan Love is going to be the one that they're going to use as leverage. Like when you said structure, Jordan Love, I'm like, I'm like, dude, I can think of there's so many analogies I want to give on this. It's like asking for sex advice from Mike Pence. I mean, or asking for safety advice from Mike Pence, or asking Mike Pence if he's happy, and looking at his face. I mean, it's like, I'm not even talking political. I mean, I don't even care about his policy. I'm just looking at the dude's face. It's like Keith Overton said on our, on Facebook the other day, they were showing something. He looks perpetually angry, so it's like, it's crazy asking Bill Belichick to put on clown makeup. I don't know. I mean,
party planner.
Party planner. Bill Belichick, extrovert party planner. Exactly. I mean, this is Jordan Love is like nothing remotely in terms of structure. If they got Jake Fromm and said they were going to do that, I would have been like, okay. And I'd even feel a little better about Dillon, because I'd say at least we know where they're heading with this.
Right.
Yeah.
So
no way.
We'll see. And great questions, great activity in the chat room. Thank you, everybody. We love Thursday nights. Real quick, we don't have to belabor this one, but I want to just touch on it because it had to be one of your favorite third day fits. Zach Hubert asks, "What's up, Cephus with the Lions?" Oh, could you have a better guy for Marvin Jones, who won't be with the Lions next year, to hand off the baton to Marvin Jones, also 5th round pick, also a guy I think that when he fell to the 5th round, we were like, what are they doing? Cincinnati ends up getting him. So Cephus, I mean, this is going to be, and he gets paired up with Okudah, who said he was the best wide receiver he faced. He's going to be starting for this team next year, or maybe even earlier if Marvin Jones gets traded because the Lions don't contend or he gets hurt. So add your cherry on top of the Sunday, Cephus Sunday.
Oh, it's great because number of things. One is even Gil Brandt came out when that pick came out and compared him to Michael Irvin. That was his comparison to Cephus. Now, and I love the Marvin Jones comparison because Marvin Jones led the league a couple years ago in contested catches. And when you hear the downside of Cephus, you'll say, well, he ran a 4.73, and yeah, he cleaned that up with a 4.56 in the pro day, but he's still always going to be a contested catch player. Okay, so who's his quarterback through 2024? The one guy who is not afraid to throw contested balls or tight coverage balls to anyone, who has the confidence to really make those types of Mahomes-like throws before Mahomes was even making them, just not with Mahomes' style and ability to read the field necessarily, or even having the offense or receivers that Mahomes has had. But Matt Stafford, man, for him to get a tight coverage, dynamo like Cephus, and he's not going to be afraid to make those plays. And you can see the possibility of how, yes, they have Geronimo Allison, who's a good slot player, but you could see how maybe Cephus switches out between like playing where Marvin Jones plays and playing where Amendola's at and where Allison's at. And you can kind of see him being both a slot and being kind of a flanker and being used in both capacities on the field enough that you'll see the promise that he has. And he, it's kind of funny because I asked him about him. He said, I'm a complete receiver. You're either a complete, you're a complete idiot, or you're confident in your abilities to say that coming into the NFL. Like if Devontae Parker came in and said, I'm a complete receiver, I think we would have laughed. We look in hindsight. It took him 5 years to become close to a complete receiver. I think Quintez Cephus, based on the track record of what we saw with him, he's going to show up. I think he's the steal of this draft. And when it comes to the there's two guys that I think that way about, but he's one of the skill position steals of this draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's a professional. I mean, just his approach to the game. The longer I've been watching these players and trying to create content about their pro projections, you can just tell the wide receivers who understand the idea that you are in the head of your opponent and you have all these things at your disposal to defeat them. And that's your job, not relying necessarily on athleticism. And I understand that whatever he ran, 4.7, something like that. Again, it's those first few steps off the line. You see him in the first few steps of his routes really bamboozle, fluster, discombobulate his opponent. He understands how to do that. So that's fun. Are you going to name the other one? Or is that only for RSP?
No, I named it. I've talked about him elsewhere, and I will. And that's Joshua Kelly.
I
like Joshua Kelly, and I think he's in a. It's a tough fit for. It's a tough fit from the standpoint of that they have Tyrod Taylor and Justin Herbert. But in terms from an offensive standpoint, I think he'll end up taking more of the Melvin Gordon role than what people may expect. And it doesn't mean Eckler's going anywhere. I mean, but Eckler and Gordon were both top 15 backs for a couple of years. They're capable of doing that. And I think Kelly can do that as well. And while everyone's really enamored with Keyshawn Vaughn, and I understand why, and I think he certainly belongs on that list, I think less people know about Kelly.
Kelly's rugged. That's what you like about. I mean, he's a contrast to Justin Jackson, another Waldman favorite, who's vastly overachieved his 7th round draft capital. So gold star for you there. But Kelly was a 4th round pick and their first pick of the 3rd day after having no picks on the 2nd day. So you like the idea of that urgency. I think we can read things into draft capital. Ice Raider in the chat room was saying draft capital is important. Absolutely, draft capital is important. Draft capital is another data point of the NFL, and the draft's not a crapshoot. The NFL actually does a pretty good job of identifying the best talents and so on. If you watch the distribution of, especially quarterback, where the hits are. But another on a similar note, let me scroll back up here. Dan Carpentieri asked about Lynn Bowden and Antonio Gibson and the motorboat rookie. I'll have to ask Cecil about that the next time I talk to him. So Bowden, interestingly, announced as a running back. Okay. Gibson, interestingly, Washington, again, 1 pick on the 2nd day, and that's who they take. And even though there's not clear paths to fantasy value for either one of these guys, especially Washington is saying the right things about Gibson in the sense of we're just going to see what we can do to make his talent be a factor in our games. And if they took him at pick 66, because I saw with Brian Edwards, they said, well, Mayock said they had a second round grade on him. I'm like, only a second round grade? Because teams should be taking players they have. If they use round grades, they should always be taking a second round grade in the third round, and so on and so forth, because teams' boards should be stacked differently based on what they value in players, based on their schemes, based on their personal valuations. I wouldn't be surprised if Gibson had a first round grade from Washington for them to take him at the 66th pick when they have so many needs and he doesn't fill any of them, but he's this dynamic talent. And Bowden's just interesting, although I think that Gibson makes you sit up in your seat a little straighter when you watch him, thinking, wow, that's going to translate in some way, where Bowden has a lot of craftier ways to win. He's tougher breaking contact, maybe has some more trick play value and things like that. But what do you think? Because on one hand, Matt, it's interesting as we're all doing our dynasty rookie drafts, because on one hand, we're thinking landing spot, and landing spot maybe I think is most important because we talked about Green Bay in terms of a dysfunctional organization, right? It's like Adam Troutman. Like the Saints give up a 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th to get Troutman and say, that's fine. We're willing to close the shutters on the draft and say we're done for the draft, although they did trade back in to get another Taysom Hill type, Tommy Stevens in the 7th round. There's certain organizations where you say if they get a bead on a guy, then we should take notice, no matter what we thought of that guy, but especially if we like that guy to begin with. And I don't necessarily know I would say that about the Raiders or Washington, but then there's another element to this map where we can analyze, like, where's the opportunity going to come for them? But if they're a baller, they're going to create their opportunity, right? That was one of our credos back in the day. Like, talent creates opportunity. How are these talents going to create opportunity?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because when it comes to Antonio Gibson, I'm kind of on par with the fantasy community right now that I've seen thus far, that he's kind of an early 3rd round pick.
Yep.
And as a running back, I mean, listen, Darius Geis hasn't been able to stay healthy, as talented as he is. And Darius Geis is a baller when he's healthy. And we know Adrian Peterson's still a baller. Bryce Love, I don't believe in. Peyton Barber will find his way to probably play on the field at some point just as a supporting cast member. But that kind of puts you in a situation that with Gibson, I'm glad they declared a position for him. And I'm glad they made it running back, because to be honest with you, if they made him a receiver, then you kind of have this whole gadget play kind of thing going on. And you have the Tyreek Hill gadget play, which is the absolute highest end of what it can be, and Hill then translated into being a fine receiver. But then you have like the mediocre one, which is Curtis Samuel. And Curtis Samuel is a talented player, and certainly there are a lot of people out there who love what he could become. But let's face it, there's some issues with his route running that need to get a little bit better, even though you can look at the reception perception data that Matt Harmon puts out there, and you could see that he has some success rates that are really strong and bode well for his development. But there's some technical issues with him that he can get a little bit better at, and the team didn't use him that well. And Ron Rivera was part of that team that didn't use him that well. So I'm glad they're not planning on using Gibson totally as a gadget and start him off as a runner, because I think that's where he's best fit. When you take a look at a guy, and there's uncertainty with that depth chart, when you take a look at a guy like Bowden, I'm lower on Bowden than most people.
Me too.
And I like Len Bowden, but his contact balance is excellent for a smaller guy. I mean, he bounces off defensive linemen and linebackers and in succession, and he carried the load really well, but he did it as a running quarterback. It's different to be a back in the backfield and being a quarterback from shotgun running keepers.
It's like Denard Robinson, right? Remember when everybody was really excited about him as a running back?
Yeah. So it's not like he was running option like Jerick McKinnon was, and McKinnon made the transition fairly quick. But have we seen Jerick McKinnon really be a top player? He hasn't really stayed healthy enough for us to see. But he's a guy that still has work to do a little bit on his game. So with Bowden, I thought he'd really be a wide receiver. And the fact that the Raiders made him a runner, he's not going to beat out Jalen Richard. I mean, Jalen Richard is kind of an underrated scat back. So most likely this is more of a 1 or 2 year project for them. And they already have enough receivers. So when I see Bowden, I think people are overdrafting him probably by, from the way that I have it, at this point, by about 2 rounds, two and a quarter rounds, to be honest. I have them overdrafted by 27 picks. based on where I have him rated. So, if you can get him at the end of the draft, I'd be happy with that. But mid rounds, there are too many good players in this draft to spend on a guy who might end up being gadgetized.
Yeah, I've got like Antonio Gandy Golden ahead of him,
Oh yeah.
Isaiah Coulter ahead of him. So okay, here's one of my hot takes, and you can actually, I'm trying to be the wet blanket, and you can say no, there's something there. And we can start with Keyshawn Vaughn, okay? But really, Keyshawn Vaughn is part of a larger take here. In no draft that I can remember, Matt, in my opinion, my humble opinion, has there been such a steep drop off from the second round running backs to the third round running backs. I look at Darrington Evans and Zach Moss and Keyshawn Vaughn. Look, these are all NFL contributors. These are all backs who belong in the NFL. Parts of their game will translate to the NFL. On very few rosters will they be the best running back. And certainly they have cold zones in their game that maybe not give them bust risks, but certainly make me feel like there's not a high ceiling on any of these guys. And I'm lower on them, much lower than the consensus, whether we're talking initial redraft for Vaughn, because Vaughn's a guy that's going to be going very high in drafts, in regular fantasy drafts. And I'm seeing him even knocking on the door of the first round of dynasty rookie drafts. And even with Ronald Jones and his slow development, Jones still offers as much or more as a runner than Keyshawn Vaughn. Keyshawn Vaughn is a receiver, a functional receiver, a check down receiver. Keyshawn Vaughn is not somebody that's going to add value in some sort of James White way or something like that. I think this is more chasing a situation. Darrington Evans has some long speed. He's kind of nimble. He can play that Dion Lewis role, but that's it. That's all that's available for him. Zach Moss is a fun player. I just feel like these running backs you're barking up the wrong tree. And if you're looking for anything more than maybe injuries could make them a starter temporarily, and they'll have some fantasy value for you, but they're not ever going to take over their backfield. Am I being too pessimistic?
I'm kind of more in the middle of the road with that one than you are. So I would say Darrington Evans, I absolutely agree. Like, I don't get Darrington Evans. Like, he need, like, when you can't run with good pad level and extend through contact, that's like a big running back flaw for me. So, like, he's okay, but I don't get him. I agree with you on him. Keyshawn Vaughn I have is kind of a early to mid second round guy. And the reason that being is that I really do like his decision making. I think he has better speed than people realize. And while I agree that Ronald Jones might actually get it, and if he does, that wipes Keyshawn Vaughn out of the picture, I do think that Keyshawn Vaughn can be an upgraded version of James White. I actually think he can be a better version of that because he's a good receiver, because he's a good blocker, and because of the fact that he's a very good inside runner. So I'm more of a fan with that. I'm also a Zach Moss fan, but maybe that's because I think it's a perfect fit for Buffalo with him. I think they like to run more gap. He's a very hard downhill physical runner who's flexible, and he's, man, you put him one on. Utah was like, you know what? We need to block a defensive end. Here, you go over there, one-on-one, take it on, and he can catch. So you put all that together, and I just look at Devin Singletary, and I think Devin Singletary to me is the example of the guy who was really the contributor that everybody went gaga about, because I'm like, he, again, short, slow, small, not very quick, unbelievable vision with great footwork. Well, yes, I understand Zach Moss is short. He's slower, but he has good vision. He's extremely powerful. Right. He has really good feet, and he's bigger. And so I think Moss is going to end up taking over that backfield from Singletary at some point, and he's not going to let it go. So I'm kind of a little higher on Moss than other people are. To me, he's Travis Henry with receiving skill, and then everyone inserts their jokes about Travis Henry. But that he even got Travis Henry's number, actually, which is kind of fun. But yeah, I'm more on that. The guy who, but those are guys that I think all belong kind of in the second round to me. And I understand how like maybe other people might like you, maybe you put them in the third round and you're not as high. But I like the fact that you're going to take a stand on that because I see the arguments for it. I just, the only guy that I'm kind of like, one is not like the other. The rest is Darrington Evans. And then I'll throw Anthony McFarland in there, even though he has that wee upside.
Steelers.
Yeah, he needs a roadmap to figure out where the hole is sometimes, even when he's in it.
He's your corner store guy. He's your going to the corner store. He's used to being able to beat everybody to the corner, and that's what his game is predicated on. I have no idea what the Steelers are doing after. I look at the fourth round. Speaking of the corner store, Matt, I compared these fourth round picks: Benny Snell. It's like scratch off tickets. I mean, it's just Samuels. Randy Fichtner just doesn't have the will to use his versatility in a way that can create advantages.
If he were on the Chargers, it'd be a different story.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love the Zach Moss, Devin Singletary combination is inspired. The way that they fit together like two pieces of a jigsaw puzzle in terms of their strengths. So I think Zach Moss is going to be a really fun Green Bay, Buffalo with Epinesa and Moss just got perfect players for the city, right?
I want to be a Buffalo fan,
right?
I mean, like if it all came together, it would be because Jake Fromm shows more arm strength, and because I'm rooting for the kid and I like his game, and he becomes like kind of the gritty kind of leader quarterback behind this really physical team. But even with Josh Allen, like I love where Buffalo's going. I have a player I've been dying to ask you about.
Go ahead,
because this one just shocked me when he fell. Eno Benjamin going to the Cardinals. I just think, just looking at him, and I'll just tee it up for you to tell what you think. I know he's not like, to me, I've joked that he's like 98 proof LaShawn McCoy. Like that's kind of my nickname for him. Yeah. He's not quite there, but he certainly has a lot of those skills. And he had, but he goes to a spread offense in Arizona. Right. And Kenyon Drake's 1 year left. Yep. Chase Edmonds is good, but is he going to be great? I don't know. Like they got two backs I really liked in this draft, and that was Eno Benjamin and Jonathan Ward. And Jonathan Ward's is kind of like my late round sleeper favorite pet project, who's kind of the UDFA. And both of them are great receivers, and they're really good in this type of a format. And I'm just looking at Eno Benjamin and going, if you're not really, you got to take, if you're looking at AJ Dillon, Zach Moss, Joshua Kelly, and Keyshawn Vaughn, but you could be getting like Mims, Chenault, Ruggs, Edwards, Pittman, T. Higgins, Jalen Rager. Why wouldn't you do that? Those guys get the receivers first and then say, you know what? If I'm going to take a chance on a running back, let me just pick up Eno Benjamin because I can get him at the fourth round and, or maybe at the end of the third round, really more the end of the third round. And that would be better than like where a lot of these backs are being taken in that same range. I think he's a better overall fit and a talented player who I just think could wind up being a receptions leader as a PPR running back.
Right. He overlaps so well with Drake and with Edmonds. And they said, love it. Teams just telegraph their intentions and then you watch it play out. They wanted to get a third running back. They wanted to get somebody who was capable if they found themselves in a situation where the first two backs went down, or otherwise a back who could be a 3-down back. And Benjamin was one of those players. And in a vacuum, pre-draft, again, I'm thinking, well, his burst, his speed, kind of blend in NFL terms. He's not always the most efficient runner, but he definitely has a 3-down skill set. But when you think of, so here's how you can think of Eno Benjamin. Some of these backs you can think of, like come week 12, week 13, week 14, if injuries make them in the bullseye as what the team has to rely on in fantasy, we're going to say, put him in your lineup. I know it didn't work out with Mike Boone, okay? But you get the idea, folks. I'm just going to...
But he was good. He's good, man. Mike, you called Mike Boone. We were watching him at the Scouting Academy, and there were a couple plays with him, and I was like, I get it. I finally got to see it, and I was like, I get it. I see why Sigmund liked it.
He's got that title. And then in week 17, but look, Eno Benjamin is a very... Eno Benjamin is absolutely as functional as in NFL terms as all those other backs we were just talking about. He shouldn't have fallen. He gets to stay in the state of Arizona. And another guy that I mean, again, I'm just saying, Chris Carson, we'll see about his injury situation. Rashad Penny, who knows if he's even going to be ready to start the season. Seattle, there was some talk they were going to take a running. I don't know what Seattle's doing in the draft, by the way. I have no idea.
Me neither.
Like really and truly, I have no idea what they're doing. I mean, I really don't. But DJ Dallas is a nice player. I mean, it's again, so it's interesting, right? Because to me, these backs are all in the same galaxy of talent in the sense that they're not going to blow anybody away in their backfield. They're not just going to come in and assert themselves like, say, Alvin Kamara did, even though Kamara was a third-round pick. They're not in that galaxy of talent, but if you ask them to do work in an NFL offense, they can get it done. So I think DJ Dallas is in that same vicinity where if he's called upon to play a role, he can add some special teams value too. And adding special teams value is nice for these late round guys because it gives them a chance to make the roster, and then eventually they can have a chance to endear themselves to the coaching staff and the fantasy community with the injury rate at running back. So when you add anything on, and with DJ Dallas, I think he's compact. I love backs that are compact and run with that pad level and has the burst, can do a little bit as a receiver. So I thought that was a really nice pickup for them.
Yeah, I'm probably underrating him a bit, but I have him as kind of a LaMichael Pirine type of guy who can
overachievers.
Do that gig. Yes, but I want to play a game with you if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
It's kind of like we'll call it over quoting. It's kind of like how if you ask a plumber or a painter to like do something for you and they know you're a complete pain in the rear, so they're going to quote you. They know that this job is going to be not worth it to them, so they'll say, yeah, I'll do this and then they give you a number that's probably like 10 times the actual price because they know that if you're willing to pay that, then they'll deal with you as a headache to have. So I want to know, who are the guys in your rankings, one or two guys in your rankings who you put them so low that no one's going to be able to draft them,
right?
Because they're never going to fall to them.
Exactly. Like these are like, sometimes I even come right out and say in the Bloom 100, like, this is basically a do not draft ranking, and it's still DeAndre Swift. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anybody says. He's not better than Kerryon Johnson.
I agree.
If Kerryon Johnson can't stay healthy, that's a different path to value for DeAndre Swift. And if you bet on DeAndre Swift saying Kerryon Johnson's not going to stay healthy and hits, congratulations, kudos.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
I just don't think that I don't understand. And with Detroit, I understand what they're doing. I just don't think. I mean, Jeff Risdon, always a good football mind. He laid out what messages he got from Detroit. It's like they don't care about speed and they want to run the football. I mean, that's what they're about. They're about running the football, even though they've got Matthew Stafford. So I think DeAndre Swift would be one. Again, I have those running backs, Vaughn and Moss, a lot lower, Evans, a lot lower than I'm seeing them go in drafts. Who else I'll
give you one.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Cole Kmet.
Like, jeez,
Cole Kmet. Like, he's like, listen, and DeGuara. Okay, yeah. When the quote is DeGuara is going to be our Justin Juszczyk, that right there, all you have to do is look up Justin Juszczyk and say, has he been fantasy relevant ever? No, take him off your draft board. Then let him prove otherwise, and you can get him another time. But Cole Kmet, he can catch, he can run, he can block some. He just can't do any of it well enough to be a top-tier threat. So you can say he looks like a Travis Kelce in training, but he's not anything ever remotely going to be like that. So if you're going to take a tight end, wait, because there's guys who aren't even getting drafted who might be more compelling that you can take at the end of the draft or take in your waiver wire period. And those are, those are two guys to me that I'm like, yeah, I marked them down far enough along with Swift. Cause I love what you said about Swift. I mean, I think Kerryon Johnson is a terrific runner and he's a more talented runner than Swift. Swift may outwork him. Swift may eventually have the longer career because maybe he is more compact, sturdier. But if you keep things even as it is, it's no contest.
Yeah, absolutely. And Diego said Rager is one of my. I think I have Rager. I have Ayuk around like 21 or 22. So, and look, one of the things you can see, and I don't know if it's a cheat code or not, but a lot of people are going to first and foremost go by draft capital. And honestly, if you just did a rookie ranking in the order of draft capital, it probably would be better than some of the rookie rankings. Maybe one of the bad years I had in the Bloom 100 or something. I don't know. But there are certain draft capital players. Remember Bishop Sankey?
I sure do.
There are certain draft capital players.
Andre Williams.
Where people will look at draft capital plus situation and opportunity and say, I want that. I think that's Keyshawn Vaughn this year. But Cole Kmet being the first tight end off the board, I wouldn't even put him in the top 5 fantasy tight ends in this draft.
No.
I mean, he's just a limited player. And you got another one of your guys too, Harold Harrison Bryant. I mean, I think that is more the area of the draft that Cole Kmet belonged, and Bryant probably offers more than Kmet as a receiver. Certainly. Dan Carpentieri was asking about the Patriots tight end draft. And what's interesting here, by the way, it is the new Gronk and Hernandez. I mean, you can see Belichick gave up 6 picks. I think he got a 5th round pick back too. But Belichick really wanted to come with these guys. By the way, Dalton Keene was on Liam Lammey high school team.
Yes.
Together. So that shows you how long, because I remember Cecil and I joking back when Liam was like 7, like, oh, one day we're going to be talking about Liam Lammey in the draft class, and it's close.
Yeah.
Dalton Keene. And then I know we like Devin CSE very much. And I think that's the guy between CSE and Troutman. I can kind of go back and forth on them as the top fantasy tight end of this class. What did you think about the Patriots making that strong move up to get those 2 tight ends?
Well, I mean, they're going to need help along that offensive line. So I think a CSE is a guy that probably can help out on that level. But also, we know what we like from him as a receiver and a ball carrier after the catch. So I thought it was a really smart pick and kind of a validating pick of how anyone who really has studied his film and appreciated him could come away and see that. Because, Belichick, if there's one thing that I think he's kind of a connoisseur of and very much has shown kind of a heart on his sleeve, is that he likes to have 2 good tight ends. And with Keene, I mean, I watched Keene enough that I thought he might make a roster, and based on fit, he could be really good H-back, because, man, he goes up and wins that ball. And he's someone that kind of has a hidden kind of talent for that you don't see often enough, because I don't think the Hokies had the offense or the personnel to really exploit what he could do best downfield. He has to learn to become a better blocker overall, but again, you're using him as an H-back. He's functional in that regard right now. So I like that they came away with those 2 players. I don't necessarily, we can, like you said, new Gronk, new Hernandez, as Dan Carpentieri said, right there. Yeah, possible. I don't know if it's not gonna be as bad as New Coke, but so that's Pepsi. A good thing, or anything like that. But it's certainly, I wouldn't say new and improved, but certainly new and maybe good enough. And I would invest, considering that you can get a CSE probably in the 3rd round, mid-3rd round, may not be a bad choice to be able to get him, depending on what you got early and you have multiple picks. If you have like multiple picks in the 3rd round, or you've had multiple picks in the 2nd, you got your fill of guys, he's not bad to take a chance on. I think, but the same thing is true of guys like Troutman and Alberto, and and then you can go later in this draft. And again, Harrison Bryant is certainly a guy that I don't think Njoku's long for the Cleveland Browns, to be honest. And at some point they're going to, I like Austin Hooper, but Harrison Bryant could wind up being that guy in open space, and being that second tight end that they go down the field with, while Hooper's the one blocking or playing the short game. So, and I honestly think too, this is either Baker Mayfield's going to get his act together this year, or the Browns are drafting a quarterback next year.
Right. And in the Stefanski system, there's that highly structured system where they can take a quarterback that other teams might say has limitations, but they say he can run our system. That's what we care about.
Captain Kirk.
And you're right that, Kirk, everyone wants Kirk Cousins. Harrison Bryant is definitely in the same galaxy of talent as Austin Hooper. I mean, Hooper just got paid because the NFL is so desperate for tight ends, but absolutely, when we watch them on Sundays, we might say he's even maybe a little better than Austin Hooper. And that's going to be something interesting to watch for sure. They're going to run a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets in the Stefanski offense. And I know you and I we could do the debate here. See, we should try to do what other podcasts do and create tension and have a fight about whether it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Jonathan Taylor, like ding, ding. But, certainly both of those guys, you could tell a story about how exciting it is. But let me ask you this, because the question had just come up in the chat room. If you have 1-1 and 1-6, Andrew Knight asked, if you have 1-1 and 1-6, could you turn it to number 1 overall to get Clyde? And at this point, I mean, I will say this: 1-8 might not be that much different in value than like 2-2 or something like that, in terms of that run of wide receivers that's going to go at the end, the second half of the first round into the early second round. So I'm not that attached to that. 1-6 is probably going to get you Cam Akers or Justin Jefferson. I don't know if these are guys. I mean, I like Akers, but I do think that, you know, the difference between Akers and Clyde Edwards-Helaire in his situation, or Jonathan Taylor in his situation, or did you see CD Lamb is taking the 88? By the way, CD Lamb's going to be Dallas Cowboys 88. So I mean, the answer might even be CD Lamb in PPR leagues. Who, if you don't mind, again, get your RSP, folks, if you haven't already. But who's the 1-1, man? If you have the 1-1, who's the 1-1?
I'm going to throw you for a loop.
Yeah.
J.K. Dobbins.
Oh, well, okay.
And
I understand.
And here's the thing. But here's the thing. If you want, the guy who just asked about Edwards-Helaire, if that's your 1-1, totally get it. Go get it. Make that deal too. I agree that you should make that deal. Okay. Because for the reasons Bloom laid out. If you think it's Jonathan Taylor, go do it, because Jonathan Taylor is a perfect match in that system, and Marlon Mack is a competent runner, no more, and he's gone next year, or he's going to be the backup. He'll be the backup by mid-year.
Maybe he'll be the starter for the Steelers.
Fumble it away. Yeah, maybe
in free agents.
Maybe you will, and he might be good. It might be very good for that. But J.K. Dobbins, to me, just slightly edges out both of those guys for these reasons. The Ravens have an unbelievable run system, and they're always playing at an advantage as long as Lamar Jackson is on the field. So the runner who's going to be getting most of the carries is going to be the guy who's going to be facing an advantage every time. Number two, Mark Ingram turns 30, and while he has 2 years left on his deal, they have an out after 2020 with him. So either Mark Ingram's going to go, yeah, all right, I'll back him up, just like we did with Kamara, or just like we did with somebody else. And he knows that his time is up. That's great. If not, they'll ditch him to somewhere else, and it'll be in for him. J.K. Dobbins has speed. He's Ray Rice with speed.
Right.
I mean, and the Ravens know what to do with this guy, and he was their number one back on their board. And so you're going to get more red zone opportunities, I think, than what you might get with Edwards-Helaire. I think he's going to get plenty, but I think you're going to get a more versatile back who can catch, who can break long runs, who can break tackles, who can do what you're looking for. And on top of it, yes, Patrick Mahomes with them spreading the field can create disadvantages. But with Lamar Jackson in the pocket or like in the backfield, you still are creating a mismatch there. So really, if you have Dobbins, Taylor, or Helaire as your top guy, I'm not going to argue with you. I just like Dobbins the most.
Yeah, so 1-4 is where you want to sit, right? When you throw CD Lamb in there as your consolation prize, 1-4 is really where you want to be sitting. Like if you can trade down from 1-1 to 1-3 or 1-4, do it. Even if you just get a second round pick or something in it, because 1-1 to 1-4 is very level. CD Lamb didn't necessarily end up in a spot to maximize his value right now, but CD Lamb's a baller. Go ahead.
Here's another one I just want to bring up about Lamb. Let's remember something. Last year, Dak Prescott almost threw for 5,000 yards. He got 1,100 yards out of Cooper and Gallup. And if you add Cobb and Austin's production together, that was 1,000 yards worth of receiving too. And Cobb's gone. Austin is no threat. And you're going to put Lamb probably in the slot if you're smart, even though, yes, Cooper's a better slot player according to all the stats. And my buddy Jay Moyer bringing that up on Twitter. But the point is that Cooper's also a more proven outside threat. Why wouldn't you keep the veteran on the outside so that you can put the young guy on the inside and not have to deal with press coverage? So as a result of that, you're probably going to wind up with Lamb and Cooper switching off inside outside. And as a result of that, you're going to see a lot of receptions for Lamb. He's going to be a highly productive player even this year. And we got to remember they did that even with Ezekiel Elliott rushing for 1,300 yards last year. And people criticizing Dak Prescott, pretty much for at least half of the year for, some certain dumb play one way or the other. I mean, Dallas is going to be a threat this year on offense at the very least.
Yes. And that's what's good. And I hope we were talking about this earlier in the chat room. We also have Tony Pollard, Blake Jarwin, also someone who's going to take a step forward for fantasy this year. You just hope that Mike McCarthy is just playing like CEO and going to let Kellen Moore take the reins, like really take the reins here, and deploy all those talents. And they have a good offensive line, and they got like Wisconsin starting center in the 5th round, I think. So
yeah,
I mean,
Tyler Beatas,
he can start. I mean, he's not necessarily going to be Travis Frederick in terms of upside, but you know exactly what you're getting. He can start right away and help offset whatever hit the offense was going to take.
Is Mike McCarthy the co-pilot in Airplane?
That's a good reference, folks. If you haven't seen it, the youngsters are like Airplane.
Yes.
Yeah. Airplane, Naked Gun. What was the name of this? Didn't those guys had a series too?
Detective or something? There was some
Squad
detective
or something
show.
like
Police
that.
Squad. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those were the good old days. Airplane is fantastic. See, when I was, it's the last couple minutes. It's not like the on the couch, which will come back next week for the last 10 minutes of Off the Rail. But if you can't tell everybody, I was not really supervised as a child. I raised myself in some ways. And I was staying up late to watch Blues Brothers, Caddyshack, Airplane, all of these movies when I was like 6 or 7 years old. And now that there's a 7-year-old in my household and I think about that, I look back at that like, wow, I'm not sure about that.
What if I told you I was there with you, but I had people take me to see those movies?
Well, I saw 48 Hours when it came out, and that was like I was 8.
Yeah.
I remember getting taken to the theaters to see that. So
I saw Jaws at 6. Imagine.
Right. That's why
then I learned how to
so
swim.
Much.
Then I learned how to swim. Imagine that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why you keep coming back to that.
That's right.
Yes. The so many. Airplane. So much. We're all on that airplane right now. Hopefully Stryker is out there somewhere to guide it in for a nice soft landing for us. Thank you, everybody. The chat room has just been fantastic. And Jason Cornell says chicken or the fish. And I actually, when Cecil and I do recaps. No, I did. This is a Bloom analogy. Cecil and I do recaps. I haven't used this one for a few years, but I always brought up Airplane. And I said like the people who ate the fish. Sometimes the team shows up and they look like the people who ate the fish that day. You know, that's just what happens. It happens like the week 4, week 5 trap game where the team that won the first 3 or 4 games gets beat by 20 points by a team that looked terrible. Anyway, yes, Airplane references always welcome, folks. This is great spending time with y'all in the chat room. I see new people telling us it's their first time experiencing this live with us, and then of course so many of our old standbys, our old friends. Whatever we can do for you, and look, this is always what we've been here for, right? I mean, you know, coronavirus, no coronavirus, this is our little shelter. This is our little clubhouse. And whether it's watching football or breaking down football or managing our fantasy teams or just spending time with each other, all those other things take a little break. The things that scratch and claw and take a little bit away from us. We're protected from those things when we're spending time together. And if we do anything to help you, I promise you, you're doing that to help us. If we're providing some sort of normalcy or lifting some sort of burden, even ever so temporarily, getting to do this for you, it's a pleasure to serve. It's a privilege. And we're still going to be here. And, you know, if the season's delayed indefinitely, if there's no season, we're still going to be here. We're still going to keep spending time with you because it's about human connection. It's about being a part of each other's lives, affecting each other. And thank you, everybody. So get your RSP, get your post-draft RSP. Bloom 100's free. If you're not in a dynasty league right now and you're not doing a rookie draft and you feel jealous, join a dynasty league so that you can manage your team. You can play GM and you can hopefully not do the things that Brian Gutekunst did. He had the fish for the draft. So...
he's I think he's going to be in a long line of Packers fans on the aisle slapping him,
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's perfect. Tying it all together, everybody. As always, stay classy, wear that mask, wash your